Arcade Heroes.
Greetings, it's Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com, and it's about time to start picking things up around here. I've got a lot of news that I'm going to start going through over the next maybe month or so, but we've got a giant expo that's about to take place, the Super Bowl of the arcade industry, so to speak, or I've compared it to the E3 of the arcade industry. I guess it just depends on where you come from, if you're a gamer or a sports fan. But before I get into the subject of the headline that brought you to this video, really quick, I'm going to show this off. And this is the type of thing that you wouldn't find in a typical arcade. This is more of a theme park sort of ride. It's what we call a medium scale attraction, and it's designed by a company called DOF Robotics, and they are experts in motion simulators, and this was a very early version of what they call the Hurricane 360 VR. This is filmed back in 2016, back when VR was still kind of new again on the market after it had been reintroduced in 2012 or so with Oculus. But this particular simulator has had variations. There's one where it uses a giant dome screen instead of VR headsets, and they've had other ones too. But the reason why I'm bringing them up, and let's pop over to their website, or actually I guess there's the fun part before I do that. It's not very impressive just watching it shake some people around, but you really want to jostle them to the side and then flip them around. There we go. So the company behind this, again, DOF Robotics, here's their website. So here's one version of that Hurricane 360 ride, at least a rendering of that. But if you go to their website and go over to products and entertainment, you can see some of the different things that they have. One of the big ones that they've been promoting a lot in recent years is this Monster Jam Gravedigger, which also uses VR headsets. Seats 6, if I'm recalling correctly, and is very impressive. It's a huge vehicle enclosure made to look just like the monster truck, and put you through an experience that's kind of similar. And then they have a bunch of other things, including what we would call a large-scale attraction. And if I'm recalling correctly, I think Disney Hollywood has something like this, or maybe it was Epcot, where you sit in a giant theater and it has this enormous dome screen. And so this is kind of like that, but instead of having just the seats and the smells, you're actually put into these platforms. Although I'm not sure how they load you up on that, if they would use a crane or something. But anyways, so why am I talking about this company? So they obviously are not your typical arcade developer. That's why I've not really mentioned them much. I mean, they're an interesting one to see at trade shows like IAAPA, and of course if you come across a theme park or a giant FEC that happens to have one of their games, but they've not produced, as far as I'm aware, an actual video arcade game like Raw Thrills or Sega or Bandai Namco would produce until now. And so this was a very surprising thing that came across with some news in the run-up to that IAAPA show that I just mentioned. So here we have Angry Birds Fury Road by DOF Robotics, which again, as far as I'm aware, is their very first standard arcade game. They decided to go with a sit-down driver. I mean, sometimes new companies will go with something very different, but then other times when they jump into the arcade industry, they instead want to do something like this, where they are doing, I guess you could say it's safe to do a driving game or a light gun game when it comes to the arcade business, because those are always a guaranteed hit. And so this is just a 3D rendering of the single cabinet, and I believe the name of that bird is Red, correct? But you can actually get this with the Yellowbird, whose name, if I'm recalling correctly, is Chuck. Chuck or Bob, I don't know. But this allows you to, as it says on this flyer that I received from Nick, thank you for sending it my way, is dive beak first into the whimsical world of Angry Birds like never before. DOF Robotics, in an exclusive partnership with Rovio Entertainment, proudly presents the Angry Birds Fury Road, an exhilarating interactive racing adventure where fantasy meets reality. Oh yeah. And so on the features that it mentions, it has AI-generated maps and 4 game levels. Now, perhaps that's just instead of using what we used to say procedurally generated levels, so like the theme of the map will be the same, but every time you play it would have a different layout. It's hyper to say AI than it is procedurally generated. But DOF Robotics, since their specialty is motion bases, simulators and such, this does have a motion base on it. So a 3 degree of freedom, that's what DOF stands for, active motion platform. And so it'd have, I think 3 degrees would be pitch, yaw, and roll. But obviously it's not going to be flipping you upside down like that hurricane simulator that I just showed you a moment ago. It has 55-inch 4K monitors. It says 60 hertz resolution. I mean, you could have different hertz on the monitors, but as long as the game itself is at least 60 frames a second at 4K, then it should be good. And then you have sound, vibration, wind effects. I say plug and play. I guess that's every arcade game, really. It can link up to 8 players, has a global ranking system implying that it connects to the internet, and then optional ticket redemption, and works with pretty much any coin or card system. And then we've got kind of a screenshot here of the racers. Now, in doing some research on this, again, I'm not well versed in the Angry Birds universe. I'm familiar with the Angry Birds game in general, and I think I played the mobile version many years ago, but I've not played all the variations that exist and such. But I know there was a Mario Kart style racing game called Angry Birds Go that was released in 2013 but was delisted in 2019, and that was developed by a company called Exient. I'll get to them in a second. But that's where this looks like a modernized version of that, but I don't know if it's a sequel to Angry Birds Go or a remaster or just a completely new thing or not. But this just has a few other sales details and such where you can feel the rush and live the game. But that's the official flyer for it, and as it said there, you can pre-order them. But I mentioned that there is a company behind Angry Birds Go called Exient Games. If you go over to their website and check out their games, they don't really have a lot there. It doesn't look like, at least from what I could find, they didn't have history of their games there. Lemmings and Angry Birds, Transformers, and Dancing with the Stars, I guess, would be their most recent ones. Now, continuing my research on the Angry Birds wiki, it already has a listing for this game there, where it mentions that Rovio and Exient are working with DOF Robotics to develop the game, and that it actually appeared at an event called PlayCon in Malta a few weeks ago from when I'm recording this. And this photo was apparently shared on Reddit, where it showed the game was set up just a single cabinet at the Exient booth. That's all we've seen about it. Otherwise, this mentions that it has these characters: Red Chuck, the Blues, Matilda, Stella, Terrence, Bomb, and Bubbles. And then there's also a link to an intergame online story about this, which doesn't really have much information aside from what I've already covered there. But again, this will be at IAAPA 2024. That is starting in just a few days from when I'm recording this, which is Thursday, November 14th. But I'll be there at the show to check this out, along with a bunch of other games. And so, like I said, I'm going to be recording a lot, and so I'll be nabbing this. I don't know how many of these units will be there, but be cool if they had 8 of them at least at the DOF Robotics booth. I forgot to look up what their booth number is, but if you're not going, you don't care anyways. I'll find it. So they're usually in the back of the hall, not in the arcade or what they call the games pavilion or games and arcade pavilion area. But yeah, so that's a surprise. Was definitely not expecting that because, well, I mean, we recently had news of Angry Birds Boom coming along from Raw Thrills, and that was just released a short time ago. And so now you'll have 2 different Angry Birds games, one a sit-down shoot-'em-up redemption game, and then this driving go-kart racing game, competing against each other. Now with a motion base, that generally means that the game will be a little bit more expensive than something than a racing game that wouldn't have it. Your typical prices on non-motion racing games in recent years has been something like $13 to, I've seen upwards of $20,000 just for a single one. I mean, DOF Robotics, where they've not done anything of this smaller scale before, I have no idea what they might end up charging. I think that Hurricane one, if I'm recalling correctly, was something like $250,000 to $300,000. Obviously, this wouldn't land in that same price range. At least I hope it wouldn't. But would this be under $20,000? Will it be a little over $20,000 per cabinet? I'm not sure. That is something I will ask. And that'll be another question that's for arcade operators to ask is, who's going to be distributing this? Who's going to be selling this? But those are questions we'll find out. Please stay tuned to my channel as well as to the website for a full-blown IAAPA preview. On tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a live stream where I'm going to go through the entire thing of everything that I know that's coming to IAAPA. And I'll be doing that in the evening. I'm not 100% sure of my schedule yet, but I'll try and announce that in advance so that I just don't drop it on everybody. But let me know what you think about this one in the comments below, and we'll catch you on the next video.